They called in live to announce the time of their own death, and everyone heard the verdict on the radio. The frequency murders. The rain had been falling since noon, and by night, Vancouver was drowning in glassy reflections. Samantha Crowley always told herself that night was for those who didn't want to be alone. She didn't host the late-night show for ratings. Years ago, as a teenager, she had been saved herself, hearing in the dark the calm voice of a radio host speaking as if directly to her. Before starting her shift, she pulled from the desk drawer an old plastic ID badge with a faded photo, a keepsake from her first night on the air. She ran her finger along a crack and silently renewed her private vow: keep the line open for those in the dark. Only then did she put on her headphones. "The line's open, Sam," came the voice of Leon Marlowe, her technical director. "Try not to scare anyone more than usual." She smiled into the microphone. "You're listening to the Nightline with Samantha Crowley. The line is open." The red light on the console blinked. "Good evening. You're on the air." "I have 47 minutes left," a man's voice said, muffled, as if from a basement. "At 3 o'clock sharp, I'll be lying on the asphalt near the Hastings bus stop." Samantha froze. "Excuse me? Is this a joke?" "No, Miss Crowley. I can hear my end. Been hearing it for a week now. Words, music, whispers, all over the radio." His voice trembled, and at that moment the background whisper in her headphones fractured into an irregular sound, like a crack in the rhythm, a glitch caused by emotion. He sobbed, and the noise evened out again. "Have you called the police?" "They won't hear it. It's only for me. And now, for you." The line went dead. The frequency meter read 96.4. Their station always broadcast on 97.1. At 3:07, the news cut into the music. Police confirmed the death of a man in the Hastings area. The announcer's tone was even. Samantha stared at the blinking on-air light while the rain drummed against the glass. She didn't yet know it was the first call in a chain of deaths. The next 3 nights passed in quiet tension. Samantha hosted as usual, but between calls, her attention was fixed on what lay under the voices, not on the words themselves. Each click of the console switch made her heart race. On the 4th night, he came back. "Miss Crowley?" A woman's voice, hoarse, tired. "Tomorrow at 5:12 a.m. on the Lionsgate Bridge, a silver car will hit me." Samantha immediately started recording the conversation. "How do you know that?" "I hear it. Words between songs, sometimes in the silence when you're not talking. They say my name and the time. It's like a sentence." When the call ended, she opened her work log. 3 columns: time, place, background. Under each call, she wrote GPS coordinates down to 6 decimal places and a note on the nature of the background noise. Today, she added, "slight rhythm shift at second 3. That evening, she called Leon. "We had another call like that," she said. "Maybe a coincidence," he replied dryly. 5 calls in a week, Leon, all with exact coordinates and time. "So what are you going to do?" "Figure out how it works." "All right, I'll cover the broadcast if needed." At home, without turning on the light, she took an old radio from the shelf, set it on her lap, and manually tuned the dial until it rested on 96.4. In her headphones was the same undertone, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. In her notebook, she wrote 3 words: carrier, the frequency itself; marker, the code for time and place; payload, the whisper. Lying in the dimness, she thought, algorithms live by predictability. If it was truly an algorithm, it must have a weakness. At dawn, the newsfeed reported a woman killed on the Lionsgate Bridge at exactly 5:12. The silver car fled. Another line went into her log, and another undertone lodged in her memory. In the morning, Samantha sat in a small gastown cafe, eyes fixed on her laptop. Her search brought up fragments of old newspaper clippings and a few archived forum threads about an unlisted frequency. Almost all mentions converged on one name: Henry Vellon, a radio engineer fired in 1987 after the closure of some research station. She found his address in an old phone directory. The door of his suburban house opened after the second knock. A tall, thin man with gray hair sized her up quickly. "You're here about the frequency?" he said without greeting. "Come in." Inside smelled of dust and solder. Shelves were stacked with reels, tapes, and bundles of yellowed schematics. Henry was fiddling with the cord of an old tape recorder, tapping the casing with a screwdriver. "Tea?" he asked, already heading to the kettle. Without waiting for an answer, he flicked a switch and returned to his work. "In the 80s, we worked on a project called Subwave." He connected an old hard drive to a laptop. On the screen, a folder opened. Cleanup_1987. Inside, code files and one report. Anomalies, 27%. Henry lingered on it, then added quietly, "One of those anomalies was my nephew. I haven't been back here since." He went back to the cord. "Think of it like this. The frequency is the road, that's the carrier. The code is the address you drive to, that's the marker. And the whisper, that's the cargo, the payload. That's what does all the work." "What kind of work?" asked Samantha. "Pushing. Sometimes to the edge. Repetition is their strength. Chaos breaks them." She carefully wrote down the phrase, "Repetition is their strength. Chaos breaks them." "If the station notices you," he added, looking her straight in the eye, "consider the countdown already started." The road to the station led through an abandoned industrial zone, empty even in daylight. Fog hung low, swallowing the outlines of warehouses and vacant lots. Guided by Henry's coordinates, Samantha turned onto a cracked strip of asphalt nearly swallowed by weeds. At the end stood a rusty fence. The chain on the gate was broken. She pushed the gate open. It squealed, letting her in. The building looked like a forgotten Radio Shack with peeling paint and broken windows. But as soon as she stepped inside, the door behind her shut automatically and locked with a click. Emergency lights flickered overhead, and deep in the control panels, a low hum signaled a self-test cycle. In the main room was a massive console connected to a transmitter. Along one wall stood dozens of reel-to-reel tapes with white labels, each marked with a date. Among them, she spotted one labeled Crowley S, with a date 2 days away. Her fingers went cold. On an old monitor, a cue titled Cleanup scrolled. Names, coordinates, time. Every minute, one name vanished, replaced by another. She caught herself staring at each. Somewhere, those people were still alive. In the stillness, the undertone hummed. She stepped forward. A floorboard creaked underfoot. The rhythm broke into chaotic static for a second, then smoothed out again. A ceiling speaker hissed softly, and her own voice came through the air. 22nd, 22:05, Burrard Street. On the monitor, next to her name, a red timer began counting down the hours and minutes until that time. She understood. The station didn't just broadcast, it had already cued her. In the studio, Samantha spread out her laptop, recorder, and notebook of notes. She reviewed photos of the station's reels and listened to fragments of recordings. In each file, the subsonic pulse repeated with perfect regularity. Using a spectral analyzer, she isolated codes hidden in the signal's peak, the marker, coordinates, and exact time matching her log. Her own entry was already in the list: Burrard Street, 2205, September 22, less than 2 days away. She connected a noise generator, blasted white noise on 96.4, and watched the spectrum. For a few seconds, the signal structure blurred, but the algorithm quickly rebuilt and restored the rhythm as if nothing had happened. She leaned back, remembering. 2 glitches. First, when the initial caller sobbed. Second, when she sneezed at the station. Both times, the rhythm broke for a second. Algorithms live by predictability. Chaos breaks them. Henry's words came back. So, aperiodicity was the key. In her notebook, she sketched carrier, 96.4, marker, coordinate/timecode, payload, effective loop. Beside it, disrupt phase with non-rhythmic sounds. She opened the broadcast archives and began assembling a countersignal: laughter, sudden pauses, sobs, heavy breathing, broken words stretched at different pitches. At the final stage, she added microjitter, fluctuations in frequency and phase, to eliminate repetition. When she ran the test, the whisper's rhythm wavered, but pain struck her temples instantly. Ringing in her ears, nausea, trembling hands. Leon appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame. "Overload, Sam," he said flatly. "You can't keep this up." "Neither can they," she replied, eyes on the screen. Now she had a weapon. All that was left was to wait for the appointed hour. The storm hit the city on the evening of the 22nd. Wind drove the rain in slanting sheets, turning umbrellas inside out and forcing the few cars to hug the curbs. Samantha reached the station at 2140. The yard was half flooded, water lapping at the concrete steps. Inside, everything was running as before. On the console's monitor, a stream of names and coordinates scrolled. Every few seconds, one disappeared, replaced by another. Among them, Crowley, S. Timer reading 002459. At 21:45, the phone rang. "Leave." Leon's voice was tense. "You can still shut it down and walk away." "If I leave, the list keeps running. You might not make it out." "Then I'll have something in common with them," she said, and hung up. She connected her laptop to the transmitter, entered parameters. Phase inversion of carrier 96.4. Overlay of an effective collage of laughter, sobbing, pauses, breathing, full randomization of marker timing. 1 second before launch, she leaned into the mic and whispered, "For those who listen in the dark." At 21:58, she hit transmit. On screen, the signal's spectrum jolted, then began collapsing, clean lines breaking into chaotic bursts. The red on-air lamp flickered. The frequency meter dropped to 0.42 and kept falling. At 22:04, sharp static filled her headphones, followed by silence. Pain slammed into her head, a piercing ring, as if her eardrums had been ruptured. She clutched the console edge, but her legs gave way, and the world fell into gray noise. At 22:05, the monitor showed a flat line at 0. The microphone swayed slowly in the draft. No more names scrolled on the screen. What happened to her after that? No one ever knew. The next day, A short item appeared in the city news. Frequency 96.4 MHz, officially removed from the Federal Register. No excessive signal levels detected. Evening reports mentioned something else. The number of sudden deaths in the past 24 hours had dropped to 0. In the empty night studio, Leon Marlowe turned on the light. On the table lay an unmarked audio cassette. He slid it into the player. First, the hiss of the ether. Then, Samantha's quiet voice. "Now you're free." He stopped the tape, but for a few more seconds, a soft, steady crackle lingered in the speakers, like breathing. Later, connecting to the station's old server, he noticed a single short line in the log. Residual nodes, 2%, dormant. That evening, he drove to the city's outskirts. The station building stood dark and dead. In the main room, the microphone swayed in the draft but made no sound. The city went on with its life, unaware of the price at which the silence had returned.